What is up, everybody? Matt Moda here to give you some NFL player prop bangers. We're talking Thursday Night Football, Texans versus the Jets, Week 9. Admittedly, we got a pretty gross game on tap for Thursday Night Football. You know, it could have been a great game if the Jets and Aaron Rodgers didn't stink and if the Texans weren't missing two of their top three receivers, but those things are not the case. So this is one of those poo-poo platter primetime games, but that did not stop us from finding two plus money bangers for this game. All we need to do is get one of these to cash, and we're at least making money, but I'm hoping to go 2-0. Of course, before we can get into these picks, we got to do a recap. Week 8 ended up not being our week overall. Now, we were down, not horrible, down a little bit less than a unit. It was really all on the back of Sunday. Sunday just was a brutal day, awful Sunday. We were profitable on Thursday. Last week, we were profitable Monday. We actually swept the slate on Monday, but we just had a gross Sunday, which gave us a losing week overall. It was nice to sweep the board on Monday to kind of minimize our losses. On the entire year, we're up over 23 units on these NFL player props, having a pretty good year overall. Hopefully, we can keep it going with these picks for Thursday Night Football, which we can get right into. So as I mentioned, we're going to have two plays to lock in. Number one, I'm taking Breece Hall over 3.5 receptions plus 112 odds at FanDuel, putting a full unit on this bad boy, putting a full unit on the next play as well. So this Texans offense, missing Stephon Diggs already, also without Nico Collins, who's going to be out for this week, and I believe next week as well. Going up against a Jets defense that still has a pretty decent pass defense. Their run defense is where you can have them. It's their pass defenses where they can be had. So you're probably hearing that and you're saying, why aren't we taking Joe Mixon rushing props? Well, number one, it's very high. I mean, his main line over under is like 79.5, 80.5, something like that. And Joe Mixon has been very, very good this year. I mean, you look at his game logs, he's been awesome, 100%. But with only Tank Dell, who's had a really bad year remaining of the Texans receiving options, you have to imagine that the Jets are just going to put Sauce on Tank Dell, Sauce Gardner, and then they're going to do everything in their power to stop the Jets from running the ball, and they're going to force someone else to beat them in the receiving game. So, okay, you say, who is it going to be that's going to beat them in the receiving game? I don't think it's going to be Tank Dell. He's been terrible this year, and he's going to most likely get shadowed by Sauce. And then you look after that, it's a dark wide receiver room for the Texans. Xavier Hutchinson is a popular name. He hasn't done jack this season. He's had an awful year. Last week, his over-under receiving yards was like 8, or his over-under receiving yards this week is 18.5. He went over that last week. He had 19 yards. He only had one target, and that was with Diggs going down. Then you look at Dalton Schultz, who at least CJ Stroud has had success throwing the ball to. The Jets have done a good job guarding tight ends in general. Generally, if I'm backing tight ends, it has to be a matchup play against a team that gives up a lot to tight ends. That's not the Jets. And the Schultz props are pretty high, and he also hasn't done anything this season. His over-under, he's only hit once this year, which admittedly was last week. But again, this Jets team is good at guarding the tight end. So with all that said, what I ended up settling on was Joe Mixon, and specifically his receptions prop. Again, he's been really, really good on the ground this year. He's also a really good receiver. He just hasn't really needed to do that much, but he has receiving chops. And generally, teams that have a bunch of vacated targets see the biggest target increase to the running back as opposed to any of the backup receivers or tight ends or anything like that. It's not a 100% a guarantee, of course, but generally, vacated targets go to the running back more than they go to anybody else. And this Jets offense, I will admit they've been good at also guarding running back receiving props, but this isn't a play on the matchup. This is a play on Mixon getting more receiving work with nobody else for CJ Stroud to throw to. So again, the Jets defense, you have to imagine they're just not going to let themselves get beat by Mixon on the ground, and then they're going to put Sauce on Tank Dell, and nobody else on the Texans can get open. So probably a lot of dump offs, a lot of screens, a lot of short Bobo targets for Joe Mixon, which he has a high catch rate on. The only game in which Joe Mixon has caught 4 passes this year was the last game in which Stephon Diggs got hurt. He got 6 targets in that game too, which is the most targets that he's had this year. It's tough to have any faith in any pass catcher for the Texans. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson has just graded out horrifically. John Mechie could have a good game. It could be him. But to me, I have the most faith in CJ Stroud just dumping it off to Joe Mixon as opposed to forcing targets to anybody else. So that's my logic. The fact that we're getting it for plus money, I think is solid. So that's play number one. Next up, Breece Hall, 70 plus rushing yards, plus 115 odds at DraftKings. So on the other side of the field, we're taking another running back prop. This time we are taking Breece Hall, who I do think has a chance to have a really, really good game against this Texans run defense. Now, the Texans run defense is not terrible. So this is not necessarily a matchup play because they're awful. But I do believe that there are reasons that, or I guess I should say, I do think that there are reasons to believe in Breece Hall in that he has a good matchup against this Texans defense. Number one, this game's probably going to stay close throughout. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a game. I don't think the Texans are going to put up a bunch of points on the Jets. I think the Texans win because the Jets stink, but I think that it'll be close regardless. So I don't think that it's ever going to be a situation where the Jets are going to need to abandon the run game. And since Robert Saleh got fired, since the Jets changed their play caller, they've made it a point to get Breece Hall more involved than he was previously. Now, it's only been 3 games, so take that with a grain of salt, but he's hit 70 plus rushing yards in 2 of those 3 games, and he didn't do it in any game this year prior to that. In those 2 games, he went over 18 in 16 carries. 18 would be a season high. 16 would tie a second season high, the second most rush attempts that he's had in a game, and that came in the 2 of the past 3 weeks. The one game he went over was, the one game he went under in this small 3-game stretch was against the Steelers, who, they just got shredded on Monday night by Tyrone Tracy. Generally, the Steelers have a good run defense. They grade out very favorably against the run. And the snap rate for Breece Hall in these 3 games, 87, 82, 74. 74 was the lowest that he's had of this 3-game sample size. But you look at what he was averaging up until the firing of the head coach and the change of the play caller, he was averaging in the low 70s, sometimes in the 60s in terms of snap rate. So his snaps have gone up and his usage has gone up as well. Now, the Texans run defense. This is not me saying that they are a horrible run defense, anything like that. They're not. But I do think, again, that Hall should be able to have some success on the ground. Now, the Texans are only allowing the 9th fewest rushing yards per game on the 8th lowest yards per carry. So you're probably hearing that and you're like, okay, well, then they're actually a good rush defense. But there are some matchup advantages in favor of Breece Hall. The one area and why the Texans are not a top 3 run defense is they really struggle bringing runners down after contact. As of right now, they are literally allowing the most yards after contact per attempt in the entire NFL, and they've allowed the 3rd highest percentage of rushing yards against them come after contact. And they're only allowing the 2nd lowest adjusted yards before contact. So it's night and day. They do a really, really good job stuffing the line of scrimmage, contacting runners before they get very far. Again, 2nd lowest adjusted yards before contact per attempt. But after they make contact, they're having trouble bringing the runner down. That's, again, why they're not a top 3, not a top 5 rush defense. Instead, they're 8th and 9th. It's because all that stuff after the contact. The Jets' offensive line stinks. Breece Hall has never been the type of running back that was able to have a lot of success because it's not like a Saquon Barkley, a Derrick Henry, where their yards before contact is among the highest in the NFL. That's not Breece Hall. His yards before contact is very low. Breece Hall is great at breaking tackles, great at getting yards after contact. He has his rushing yards, 69.9. That's very nice. 69.9% of his rushing yards have come after contact. So the Texans not allowing a lot of yards before contact, that's not going to matter against Breece Hall, who gets all of his yards after contact anyways. So I think the Jets probably give him, my guess is probably 18 carries in this one. So over on his rush attempts, I think is also a good play. But I like the yards because he's capable of breaking one. And that's all we got. 2 bangers for you guys to lock in. It's a gross game. One of these bad boys cashes and we're making money. Both of them cash. We're making more money. And that's it in terms of plays. The last thing I'll mention before we get out of here is that I do have a Dub Club where I send all my bets out across all sports, NFL and NBA. I send out to Dub Club. $5 a month gets everything I'm playing sent to your phone via text, email, or Telegram. Now, the way it works is the plays you see me give out for free on YouTube and on Twitter, those are the same plays that I send out to Dub Club. The reason why I even have it is not everybody wants to watch the YouTube videos. Not everybody has time to watch the YouTube videos, or by the time you watch them, the odds change. Unfortunately, after I post YouTube videos, I can't help it if the odds change after that. So that's why I have the Dub Club. As soon as I decide what a play is, the very, very first thing I do is send it out to the Dub Club. So everybody on there are able to get the odds that I lock them in at, which is what you see on the screen here. So if you're interested, check that out. Link is in the description as well as the pinned comment. If you're not interested in that, no problem. You can still get everything for free on YouTube and on Twitter. And that's all we got. Appreciate everybody for watching and have a good one.